it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Take me out.
Twitchy Dolphin Media presents Let's Get To. It's baseball from sea to shining sea by the team that brings you home. And now, your host, James Christopher.
And welcome to Let's Get To. I'm your host, James Christopher, and full disclosure, I'm writing this segment on the way to Minute Maid Park for my 6th baseball game in 6 days in 3 different cities. And also, full disclosure, because I'm all about transparency, yes, this show was written. We have scripts and plans and everything. We have lighting. We even have one of those slate things. We all kind of professional up in here. But the walk to Minute Maid Park from my hotel basically took me 11 minutes from my hotel bed to my seat in the ballpark. But it was long enough to get me thinking. And it got me thinking about the doubleheader I went to right after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. The Stros were playing the Mets, the team I've hated since, '86. And it wasn't a scheduled doubleheader, but a doubleheader that the Mets agreed to play so that way the Astros could spend some time helping to heal the city. See, they were in Tampa Bay playing home games for reasons. Now, while the Astros worked in shelters and helped people displaced by the storm, the Mets went out and they served first responders. They helped when they didn't have to in a community that frankly isn't theirs. And if you want to know where my hatred for the Rangers comes from, well, it comes from their response to the hurricane, which was nothing. But that's for another show. Now, living in Austin, but having been born and raised in Houston, I really wanted to see what had happened to so many people in the city that I love so very much. And seeing what the city looked like, it was heartbreaking. Now, I remember the first task being I had to get to Houston. And because of the storms, everything was so disrupted that there was a ripple effect and there wasn't any gas. We had a massive gas shortage in Austin. It was all over Texas. And I remember it taking me like 3 gas stops to get just enough to get back home. Now, when I finally made it to Houston, I was struck by the devastation. People's entire lives were spread out on sidewalks. There was furniture, home insulation, drywall. Frankly, the first thing that I thought of and the first thing it reminded me of, it looked like a bomb went off. Something I've seen in my life. Now, driving through Montpelier, Vermont, it was very much the same feeling. Almost an entire town lost everything. But you also saw people in the community helping each other as they immediately dove headlong into a rebuild. People can be resilient, and when the rubber hits the road, they can be generous, caring, and supportive. And then that night, in town, there was a baseball game. Now, baseball occupies a certain spot in American culture, I think, for many, many reasons. One, it's a game that lots of people grew up watching and playing, some as old as 3, 4, 5 years old. It's also a sport with a lot of games that are relatively cheap to attend, which means you can get attached to ball players all up and down the roster. Not just your 3 or 4 big stars, but that 26th guy. It doesn't really work for other sports, football in particular. I'm not really sure about other sports because, why? But as a result of that, you often see baseball teams getting involved in the community to rebuild at times when they're the most vulnerable. And as we learned, that's precisely what the Vermont Mountaineers did for their community. Using the off times that the storms caused by canceling all those games, rather than sit around, they dove headfirst into helping people put their lives back together. But then I go to the ball game and I'm greeted with such generosity and warmth by all the people in the ballpark. Fans in the stands, the front office, players on the field, many of whom were dealing with the results of those storms, still wanted to welcome me to their community. So I wanted to dedicate this part of our show to the people of Montpelier, Vermont, and try to help them recover in the best way that I possibly could from Austin. So I know that we live in a world where there's a lot going on. A lot of causes that are valid, that any help you have matters. But I'm hoping if you have a couple of extra bucks, there's some organizations in the description of this episode that could use your help bringing some normalcy to the people in Vermont. I firmly believe in the efforts that organizations like the Red Cross and others who immediately started to help put lives back together. I really believe in what they're doing, and I think they need our help. But I also believe that what comes around goes around, and that we're all going to need a helping hand from time to time. And I also believe in the power of baseball. I believe that a 9-inning distraction from trying to figure out a way to recover and survive until tomorrow is incredibly important. So I applaud the Mountaineers for getting back on the field as quickly as possible. I was honored to visit and hang out with them, and I was super excited to be going to the ballpark for the first time. So if you're able to help out the people who are suffering from flood damage, even it's as simple as sharing this episode with those links, I know those impacted by the disaster would appreciate it. And now on to the show where we got to go to, frankly, one of the prettiest ballparks on the planet that was well worth the trip.
On the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
You know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean, the fellas'
Who's
names
on first? The Let's Get To team of the week.
Now in our quest for 50, and that's me getting to see a game in all 50 states, we still had Vermont to check off the list. So we reached out to the good folks at the Vermont Mountaineers of the New England Collegiate Baseball League about being on the show. Now the NECBL, the New England Collegiate Baseball League, which you might remember from such episodes of Let's Get To as the Keene Swamp Bats and the Martha's Vineyard Sharks. Remember those guys? Remember what a great time we had? Well, the party didn't stop when we went to Vermont. Now, some research and some recommendations pointed our compass to Montpelier, Vermont, home of your Vermont Mountaineers. And before we dive into our game experience, let me just get this out of the way. I know this is often a refrain based on places I've visited. Vermont is easily one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I was captivated by that beauty every minute I was there when I wasn't looking for Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby tap dancing. If you know, you know. Now for our trip to see the Mountaineers, we visited with Brian Gallagher, the president, who took a pretty circuitous path to get to working in collegiate summer league baseball.
I've been a lifetime baseball fan. I go to Cooperstown every year for the induction since the 90s. I grew up playing baseball, went to college, played basketball there, couldn't play baseball because I was doing a double major, but still had the love and passion for it. So when I got my teaching job in Montpelier, the NECBL wanted to expand to all 6 New England states, and Montpelier was the site that had the old ballpark, and we pursued that. We did about a year and a half worth of planning, and then in 2003, brought the team here and played in our first season.
The Vermont Mountaineers play at historic Montpelier Recreation Field, known as the Rec, which was originally home to the Bar Montpelier Twin City Trojans, featuring pitching legend and former Astro, and the only pitcher to beat the Braves in all 3 cities, Robin Roberts.
A great facility. This ballpark was built in the 1940s as a WPA project, and Robin Roberts played his 2 years in college here under Ray Fisher, who's the legend at Michigan, coaching here. This place went dark for about 50 years. Ballpark was kind of in disarray, and we brought it back to life in the early 2000s. And ever since then, the community wraps their arms around us and comes out every night to support us.
Now, it's one of those things I think is super cool to see the results of Roosevelt's New Deal projects that are still standing all across the country about 90 years later. As a history nut and knowing a lot about the New Deal, again, very neat to see those projects still standing. Now, it's not hard to see why the community wraps its arms and heart around this place. It's surrounded by the thick green foliage Vermont is known for, and it's as if it was cut out of paradise by God and the ground was blessed with the greatest game ever invented. It is the perfect hometown ballpark. The classic seating area dates back to the 40s, and there isn't a bad view of the game. There are picnic tables up the first base side and plenty of places to just hang out and watch the game. It gives off a very intimate feel, just the fans, the game, and the trees. The Vermont Mountaineers are the current squad calling the Rec home, and we talked to Brian about the team's arrival and the very different way the Mountaineers are organized compared to other teams in minor league baseball.
It's a nonprofit 501c3. We've got 12 people on our board of directors, people in business and education and all throughout as far as backgrounds go. So basically all the money that goes in goes right back into the team in the ballpark. We've put about $750,000 into this facility that's owned by the city, and we just continue to make improvements every year and just pay our bills. So.
Now, in their first season, the Mountaineers set the NECBL attendance record with over 35,000 fans through the turnstiles. And then their on-field prowess would eventually catch up. In 20 years, they've been to the division finals, and in 3 of those years, they walked away winners. This is an incredible accomplishment because the NECBL, as a whole, is easily one of the 2 or 3 most talented leagues in all of collegiate summer league baseball. This and so many other reasons are what keep fans coming back year after year and season after season. In many ways, baseball is the game that gives you a really good feel for the pulse of a community. This can mean celebrations and great times, and it can mean being a port in a storm for the bad times. We asked Brian about the floods and how the Mountaineers were that port in a literal storm.
It just devastated this community. It came in quickly, flooded all of downtown, many of the outlying areas in the community, Barre, Montpelier, Waterbury, just tremendous damage. On off days, we have the team downtown helping out, shovel out basements, going through and lugging stuff out for businesses into the streets, tearing carpets out of movie theaters, the whole 9 yards. So these guys have really stepped up, being from all over the country. Many of them have seen disasters where they are, and we just wanted to help out. So again, they're part of the community, we're part of the community 12 months of the year, and it was a good thing to do for sure.
One thing in common at all college summer league levels is that these players are coming to develop and hone skills that might make them draft eligible. With the shortened draft, the role for teams like the Mountaineers has only increased in importance. Whether it's getting more innings in or getting used to hitting with some lumber, it helps bridge the gap between college baseball and the ultimate goal, the majors. And when you send a kid off to play summer ball, you want them to grow not just as ball players, but as young men. And I asked Brian what he thought the impact of helping Montpelier work through the flood disaster might have on these players as individuals.
Yeah, I think they got to see that baseball wasn't the most important thing for about a week. Of course, they want to play baseball, they're collegiate athletes, they want to go pro. But in this thing, when they're looking in somebody's house, when they've lost everything and they've helped see how much mud damage was in their basement and in their first floor of their house and how much stuff they're throwing out on the sidewalk, I think it put things into perspective for a lot of these guys. And again, I think it just, they still want to do their dream, but they just kind of got a dose of reality right here and helped out.
College Summer League is so much fun to watch because of the players. They play hard, they play for each other, and they play with a youthful energy that really is lacking the minute money gets involved. And as I said, they were very competitive. That even comes down to the most intense hacky-sack game ever. Usually the players will ignore us when we're shooting, as they should. But these guys saw the camera and the intensity grew in their game. At first they were just goofing off. No volleys to be had. Do you call them volleys in hacky-sack? But the minute the camera came out, they started to put on a show, and as they say, let the kids play. Let the kids play, indeed. Now, one aspect I've always been fascinated about this area of baseball has been the concept of host families and how they help support the ball players and the team. And so many of those families come back year after year after year.
No, and I think there's such a bond. I mean, we've had one host family in particular who's also on our board. He hosts about 3 or 4 players a year. He had 2 of his players were the most recent guys that made it to the big leagues. Joe Jakes with the Red Sox and Tom Cosrose with the Padres. So it's a pretty big year for him. He's got 2 guys to the big leagues. He's got 4 players living here. They see what happens. They see that it can be done, and it's just a great thing.
Now, the Mountaineers, like every other summer league team, need to work to take care of their athletes. They are stewards of these careers, and that means respecting the plan of college coaches that trust these teams with their players. If the Mountaineers want to get recruits for the next season, they need to cultivate a reputation of being respectful of all that entails, and the Mountaineers do this in spades, which explains their on-field success.
We have the pitch smart, and our coach, we typically will have about 20, 25 guys on our pitching staff. We have a 40-man roster. And we never have that many guys in town because some get in late with the World Series, some leave early because of innings limits, but we always kind of try to keep that level up in the 20s because we don't want to hurt guys. We want to send them back healthy and better. So that's a big part of it for sure.
So now the game is on. The flag is blowing in the breeze. It was so nice outside that I almost felt bad for leaving Jessica in the 100-degree heat with the dogs. Almost. hot, y'all. The field is diligently prepared by what has to be the youngest grounds crew ever, putting so much care into making sure it was just right. The anthem is played, and there's something about the anthem in a small town ballpark that just hits different. And to borrow the cliche, if you build it, they will come, and they did. From all directions, the people of Montpelier were excited to get out to the ball game and get a little bit of a break from their current reality. As I said, it reminded me of that first series in Minute Maid Park after Hurricane Harvey. And the Rec is home to all kinds of fans, young fans, old fans, even four-legged fans. And there are some must-haves in minor league baseball that every team needs to adhere to, chief among those, mascots. And the Mountaineers didn't just say, let's get 2 when it comes to fuzzy friends. They said, let's get 3 with mascots. Skip, the center of it all, was named for Russell Skip Smith, who was involved in the early planning stages of the team, as well as many other community organizations. And according to the Mountaineer website, he passed away before the team was accepted into the NECBL. And they thought Skip the Woodchuck would be a great way to keep Russell's fun-loving personality alive and felt at the ballpark. And joining Skip are his parents. I mean, this is the best. And being media, sometimes offline, the mascots will actually speak to me when no one's around. And yes, it kind of ruins the illusion, but I had to laugh out loud at this one. I took a selfie with one of the woodchucks, and I'm not going to say who, and they whispered, I don't know why I still smile for pictures when I'm wearing this head. It struck me funny. I couldn't help but laugh, and again, I'm not going to out that one. But you can experience everything you expect in a Mountaineer game. Good food, fun merch, good beer. It's a complete experience. And any team can have a beer named after them. But how about a root beer? You don't see that very often, and it was yummy. The whole game was a blast, and it got intense with some big moments that had both benches and the fans fired up. The sun was cascading against the greatest game ever invented in one of the best baseball skies we've seen in 5 years of doing this show. It's a special place for a special game ran by special people, all making for a special evening that we won't soon forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are very excited at the Let's Get To team to announce another show, a separate show by Twitch Dolphin Media, our production company, and Let's Get To, called Let's Get To Live. And what I'm very excited about is the group on this stream right now will basically be the 4 producers of this show. One combination of all of us, many combinations of many of us, will be on this thing, hopefully weekly, with other guests talking other things. But I thought it'd be kind of cool because, you know, Scott and I have an audience, Emily has an audience, Ed, you have an audience, but these audiences don't overlap yet. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to introduce to everyone who we are. And I had some fun kind of questions to get started. And I'm going to begin with introducing, first and foremost, before we get to our questions, Scott McEntire, who's one of the executive producers for Let's Get To. Scott, thanks for jumping on.
Hey, man, it's great. This is fantastic to be part of the Let's Get To live crew.
You have waited a really long time for that.
Is it to quit?
Since you just said it, and it went into my head, and I was like, please come to me first, because if either of them steal it, I'm going to feel terrible.
I'd like to announce the end of one of Let's Get To's shows. Also, one of our regular contributors on the regular Let's Get To show, and now again one of the producers on Let's Get To Live. You can find her at Breaking Balls Podcast. I don't know why I did that awkwardly. Emily Nyman, Em, how are you?
I'm great. Very happy to be here.
You have been. It's funny because I'm messaging you when this happens, but I've ran into all these random people that want to tell me what a big fan they are of yours. I think it's awesome. All of them Astros fans too, which I think you and I have created this really ability to really build bridges, I think.
Yeah, I think we have too. I mean, I'm not surprised, Jim, if I could just say that we're both awesome and very funny and very personable. So, I mean, I am kind of off put by anyone who doesn't feel that way. Just put it that way.
You know what? I need to adopt that level of positivity
should.
instead of the self deprecation that I live with on the daily. And of course, the guy who only wears one kind of hat, Ed Rivera of the Dad Hat Chronicles. Ed, how are you?
Man, I'm living the dream, baby. What are you doing, Scotty?
D-A-D. That's D-A-D.
Yes,
Dad.
sir. I
spelling dad
usually
with
would wear my dad hat. I don't know where it is. As you can see, there's no dad hats behind me right now. So it's like Dad Hat Studios is coming down for a little bit, so it's tons of fun.
A relocation.
Relocation, yes, sir.
But we have some sort of icebreakers. I'm doing icebreakers because we start school next week, and I really hate those stupid things. Let's all.
We all hate them, but yet we all enjoy them when they happen.
We do. But I wanted to go ahead and start going around the room. We'll go Scott, Emily, and Ed, the Major League Baseball team that you unfortunately probably give much of your life to. Everybody knows pretty quickly that I am an Astros fan. Scott is holding up the birds on the bat.
The
Scott,
light blue version. Yes.
You are enduring one of the worst seasons in Cardinals history. How's it going?
It's easy for me because I'm also an Arkansas Razorbacks fan, so I am accustomed to having hope and watching it get taken away early or late, just whatever's going to maximize the heartbreak. So watching this year for the Cardinals and having just endured the Blues season, which pretty much looks exactly like the Cardinals season, I've got a real thick, callous skin at this point, Jim.
I was gonna say there's probably some moisturizer you can get for that, but
it's chapped. A little baby powder too helps a lot.
No.
We'll talk about that offline. Emily, you are
I am a New York Yankees fan, everybody. So
You're
it's
the
embarrassing
Yankees.
to say now. How far has this franchise fallen? My God.
You know, it's funny though. You brought up something interesting, and it's the double-edged sword. You and I I can't remember if it was you and I talking on Twitter with other people. I'm sorry, on X.
On X, yeah, get it right.
Whatever this.
How
moron
dare
is.
you? How
But
dare
you
get
know,
it wrong?
we've always talked, particularly Andy and I, and Go Astros, about the sort of the media bias and the sort of league counts on. They want the Yankees to be good because of finances. But you brought up the fact that it also prevents really the Yankees from being able to do a rebuild because all 29 owners would freak if a good Yankees team didn't come to town. I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, I've been going off on like crazy, like like in the movies, like when there's someone like a crazy detective with like all the strings attached on like cork boards. I've been like doing that late into the night every night, like really thinking about the Yankees and all of the salaries and the payroll salaries. I was going back to 2011 to like figure out the percentage increase since like in salary since then. Always trying to connect all these dots with why the Yankees are the way that they are at this point in time and why I don't really see it getting that much better. So for everyone that prayed for the Yankees' downfall, congratulations, you've won because here it is. It's happening in front of us in real time.
Wow.
Hand
Speaking
out.
of, and then Ed, we all know who you root for.
Yes. I'm a Guardians fan. I'm a Browns fan, Scotty. So you already know, like, I mean, I know the hurt. The years of hurt, the years of just being in the basement constantly. Cavs fan, we won the championship, but after that, it just, we just drove off the cliff, and then, we've been on a constant spiral down.
The funny thing is, Ed, is you were supposed to be with me in Houston on Tuesday.
Thank you, Jesus. I wasn't. Oh my God. You know how pissed I would have been?
I wonder though, or would you have been like, okay, at the end of the day, a no-hitter is cool no matter who.
No. I'll say this. I'm going to say this. I'll say this as a killer. I'm so happy that it happened to my team. I'm so happy. Why? Because they decided half a game back of first place to just gut the team at the trade deadline. All right.
I'm really surprised you still have that C flag on your wall.
Dude,
it would just be a plain white flag.
It came close. They gave up the flag. Yeah, they gave up. Right. So I was like, I'm so happy that it happened to them because apparently, and from what I understand is both the GM and the president of the team had to fly to Houston and have a meeting with the team because the team is pissed off.
And then they got no hit.
And then they got no hit.
Yeah, they got no hit.
These things go together.
And it was a weird thing because I had a feeling in the fourth inning it was going to happen. And I started texting people in the sixth.
Yeah, thanks. I
Bromber's
got it.
pitching very well.
Yeah, I know. He was good. Very well. I mean, you know what?
Very
I'm gonna turn
well.
off for the rest of the night.
All right. Now we're going to go a little around the table. So I want to hear your favorite high points of your fandom or moments. For me, it's Jordan's home run in Game 6. Although I hate it too, because I hate that maybe my favorite call in Astros history was a national guy, which kind of, but the game is turned upside down. Is pretty good. Emily, how about you? Your biggest sort of Yankee moment that lives in your heart?
It's gonna have to be in Game 2. I'm pretty sure it was Game 2 of the 2009 ALDS Yankees versus Twins. They were losing by they needed 2 runs to tie it. A-Rod got up, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th inning, hit that game-tying home run. It was great. I mean, I still think about it all the time. I watch it sometimes. It felt good as an A-Rod fan, especially a Yankee fan, obviously, at the time, just for him to have that moment.
Is that pre
or
remember EDs?
Were you as big an A-Rod fan then? Like, has it been a consistent thing for you?
Yeah, I was. Yes, I was a huge A-Rod fan. Because when I was a kid, like, I didn't grow up in a family that is like, my dad isn't like a huge Yankees fan. My dad went to the Naval Academy. He's a Navy fan. So we watch Navy football. That's like the only sort of really strong fandom that my dad has for sports. So I grew up, I was a Mariners fan at first because I loved Ken Griffey Jr. because he was the most popular player. Did I ever watch a Mariners game? No, I don't think so. But then I must have at one point, because then I loved A-Rod. I thought he was like the first baseball crush that I ever had. I was like a little kid. So then when he came, I was a big fan. Then when he came to the Yankees, it was like the best thing ever. And then the PED stuff was like the worst thing ever. Wait, I'm getting my head of myself. That could be my worst moment.
Yeah, we're a little ahead of this. What about you, Scott?
Best moment? Well, my best baseball moment ever was actually the last time I got to wear this jersey. You see what I found? See what we found in storage? My final jersey from Warsaw. But that's my favorite baseball moments when I struck the dude out and ended my career with a blown shoulder.
That's also your worst moment?
No, not really. It gave me an excuse not to go back. My favorite baseball moment, though, was growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the Arkansas Travelers were the AA team for the Travelers. Rick's Armory sat past left field, and Jim, I've taken you there. I've shown you this. Even though the field's not there anymore, Jack Clark was down visiting in a spring training game. It was the last spring training game before they make it up to St. Louis. It was the year after the Cards and the Royals had played in the World Series. They are there, and Jack Clark hits a ball that's probably estimated to go about 480 feet over the left field wall, and that was the first time for this. Whatever I was, 14, it was like, oh, wow, these guys hit the ball really, really far. This is different from what we normally watch at the AA level. This is crazy. So that for me, that was my best moment, because it was like, it was really that realization live of how great these guys are.
And other than the Major League World Premiere, have there been any good moments for Cleveland in your
Major League 2? No.
No one believes that.
No, not at all. It's a two-parter for me. The 2016 Rajay Davis hitting that home run, that was such a cool moment. If it didn't rain, we would have won the whole series, I believe, still to this day. But obviously, baseball gods didn't want us to win, so it happened the other way. But that was a cool moment, right? Like Rajay Davis hitting that home run, like that camera angle when it was just coming at it. It was awesome, right? I was screaming like a little girl, still, remember that. And then, the other one is before we left for Cleveland, took my daughter to her first baseball game.
Oh,
ever.
Aww.
Her first her first and last Indians game.
I wonder what they'll rebrand to again in 5 years. Ed, we'll begin with you again now for your worst baseball memory.
97 World Series.
Okay.
Greg Counsell.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Emily, how about you?
Oh, my worst. I have big time recency bias, so I'm gonna go just Game 3 of last year's ALCS, because I was actually at Yankee Stadium. It was the first playoff game I'd ever been to. I was inexplicably feeling good, even though they dropped 2 in Houston, and then they did not score a single run with their ace on the mound, and it was over after that. It was over. It was over. Yeah, it was over.
I think for me, one of the things that I'm super excited about, because I've started to kind of have a level of affection for the Mets, which I'll actually explain in tomorrow's Let's Get To why that happens. And so I'm thankful for Howie Kendrick banging one off the foul pole that I can now get over the Mets in 86 and replace it with my worst moment ever, which is Game 7 of the 2019 World Series. I don't know how that's ever, like I was talking to somebody, like the 21 World Series, that Astros team was dead. It took everything to get there.
Mm-hmm.
They had nothing left.
They're just running out of gas.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I can see that happening again this year, frankly. Like, obviously it's way too early to tell, but yeah, that was it. Scott, what about you?
I was just flashing back to you saying banging one off the foul pole and thinking that's what Wade Boggs did 2 hours after the game. But anyway, terrible joke. For me, the worst baseball moment is the drop fly ball in the College World Series for the Arkansas Razorbacks. But the worst moment for the St. Louis Cardinals is Don freaking Dinkinger. When Don Dinkinger blows the call at first base and the Cardinals lose the World Series. Thanks, Don.
Yikes.
Good job. Where's that instant replay 40 years ago? Back in my day, Jimmy. Let me tell you.
Back in my day.
All right. We had one last icebreaker question. Favorite movie and why? Mine is Jaws because it's perfect. Emily?
Mine is Apollo 13 because it is also perfect, and the Apollo space program ruled and has been inspiring me my whole life.
I like that movie except for one thing.
What?
Houston, we have a problem. Anytime now, anything that goes wrong.
It's Houston, we have a problem.
Clever when they use it. That's my favorite part. Look at me. I just said. Like, man.
Tell me how you really feel, Jim.
Yeah. But that movie it's perfect. Ron Howard can't beat it.
Yeah,
Scotty Mack.
Favorite movie is Snatch because Guy Ritchie takes multiple stories, ties them in together, and brings out this beautiful product by condensing space and time.
Oh, such a good movie.
I don't know that I've ever seen the movie, Scott.
Me either.
What?
I will fix it.
So that's where I leave, guys.
Yeah, all right. I'm right behind you, Scott. I'm right behind you.
Jessica's at Jordan's wedding shower. So I will watch it this weekend. I've got a whole list of stuff. Me and the dogs.
If you don't get to it, then whenever we're in Peoria, I got to find like a portable Blu-ray player or something. Or
they have these things called laptops, and
they have these things just like iTunes.
A Blu-ray player.
Boy, I bet we can get you a VHS if we really start.
I can try me one of those VHS.
I need a color TV.
And Ed, your last one.
Guys, I'm gonna have to go baseball. It's still to me, Bull Durham.
Can't argue with it. All right. Like I said, we're going to be around every single week doing this live thing. And the fun part is sometimes I won't be on it. Sometimes it'll be just one of us. We're going to have random people popping in. So hopefully you'll stay tuned for that.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that does wrap up this episode of Let's Get To. We had a great time with the Vermont Mountaineers. Thanks to Brian and the entire team for welcoming us. Again, great time to get out to see some baseball, blue skies. Now I know what you're thinking. The game hasn't started yet. We still have batting practice going on. That's because I'm wrapping the show early because I'm going to sit down, grab a dog, and actually get to watch a full baseball game today. Again, Brian, the entire team have been so welcoming. We cannot wait to root for the Mountaineers. Just a little bit of baseball left, so make sure you get out. Get you some peanuts. Get you some Cracker Jack. And most importantly, you know what's coming. Let's Get To. Let's Get To, presented by Twitchy Dolphin Media. Creative Director, Jessica Bybee-Jedgets. Written, directed, and hosted by James Christopher. Executive Producers, Andy Tomcheson and Scott McEntire. Produced by Andrew Nelson, Eric Mertens, Jessica Naster. Commentary by Gary C. Warren, Emily Nyman, Paul Caputo, Ed Rivera. Music by Grace Usselman, On Holiday. All trademarks of the teams covered on this episode are the property of those teams. Look for more content from Twitchy Dolphin Media and the Let's Get To family, including Go-Go Astros, Fanboy 76, Yell Fight Suey, Jerseyed, and Unboxed. This has been Let's Get To, baseball from sea to shining sea by the folks who bring you home.